Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo coming at you guys with yet another live duel commentary. I ran a poll on the channel earlier in the week to see which match you guys would want to see featured on the channel, and you guys picked Salamangreat versus True Draco. So that's what I'm going to be bringing you guys today. Salamangreat starting with set 3 pass, definitely something you don't really want to see, and definitely shows that the deck has some consistency issues now that Salamangreat, Gazelle, and Circle are now at 1. And True Draco being a solid, roguish slash tier 2 deck that you might still see at any competitive style event, you definitely want to keep an eye out for it. Now, I do want to mention that we do have Pro Play Tour Philadelphia taking place at this very moment if you're watching this on Saturday, but we do have Pro Play Tour Orlando and plenty of other events taking place. $2,000 prize pools for each of the events, only $20 to enter, and I'll be doing live stream commentary for each and every one. So check out the link in the description for the live stream or to register, and I hope to see you guys at a future event. We see that the Salamangreat player is actually playing the Artifact engine and summoning out a copy of Scythe. Now, the interesting thing is, against True Draco, Artifact Scythe actually doesn't do anything. However, I think we're seeing the Salamangreat player just go ahead and flip this up, give himself a little bit of board presence before his next turn, just so he can actually go ahead and inflict a significant amount of damage to the True Draco player's life points. So, now we see him top deck a Signet Mining, which is a pretty nice draw here. He is having to stare down 4 separate back row, and that will make things a little bit difficult for the Salamangreat player to proceed, but it looks like that's going to resolve. I think that's to be expected. Obviously, when you know you're going up against True Draco, they're not going to be playing hand traps. They play Card of Demise and they can't support that, but they are going to have plenty of other cards that you're going to have to worry about. There's stuff like There Can Be Only One, which conveniently actually works with having a Cyberse type, and I believe artifacts are fairies, so you can have at least multiple of those, but pretty much all the Salamangreat cards are of the same type, so you're not going to be doing any big plays with the Salamangreat deck. There's still plenty of other cards too, like True Draco Apocalypse and True King's Return, which can be tributed off to summon a Draco monster and then just easily disrupt the opponent. But we do see the Salamangreat player summoning the copy of Gazelle that he searched off Signet Mining to send a copy of Foxy to the graveyard, and I was going to immediately link off that Gazelle to go for a copy of Balinx. That will trigger Balinx's effect, but we are going to see a copy of There Can Be Only One come up immediately, so that is going to lock the Salamangreat player into pretty much maintaining this board unless he has any other combination of monsters that can be summoned, since There Can Be Only One prevents you from summoning monsters of the same type. So we see him search Salamangreat Sanctuary off the effect of Balinx. I don't really think there's too much more he can do here. I mean, he's pretty much going to have, the ability to attack with the Balinx and the Scythe, and I believe that would be 2,700 damage, but not really anything too significant here. I don't really think the Salamangreat player is in too good of a position. I think Draco still is, neither player's really at advantage at this point, but I'd say Draco has a much higher potential to come back and take this game, just given the current board state. Now we see he's actually going to go ahead and link off the Balinx and the Scythe, possibly go for a Phoenix here. And, oh, he's going to go for Hita. Okay, so Hita is a different type, so that will work. So now he's going to go ahead and use Foxy's effect to pitch the Sanctuary out of his hand. And that's going to go ahead and allow him to special summon it, possibly pop that There Can Be Only One. So he does have the ability to make something here, obviously getting in more damage by having that Scythe and that Balinx on the board, but also just, making sure that his board doesn't get disrupted any further. Foxy's going to special summon itself out. He's going to pop the There Can Be Only One, and at this point, it's going to be a little bit tough to decide what he wants to do here. It's unfortunate that he did discard the Sanctuary, because it'd be cool if he could link off into like a Heat Leo, start shuffling away the back row. Then he'd really have the potential to start taking over here. He can go for one Heat Leo, which I think that's what he's going to do, but having that Sanctuary for the second Heat Leo would have been very nice. He's going to go ahead and target that middle back row, and that is going to get shuffled back into the deck. So that is a nice, that's a good feeling of relief for the Salamangreat player, knowing that that's one less card that he does have to worry about going into the later turns here. So Salamangreat player have a little bit of an advantage here, but I don't think it's anything too significant. Both players are about even in terms of cards. I think the Draco player actually, I think, has one card more, even though he is staring down this Heat Leo. There's a pot of duality from the Draco player. This could be big. There's a Skill Drain, Monarch's Erupt, and Diagram. So for those of you guys who don't know, Draco is actually going back to the Monarch's Erupt build, being able to just negate the effects of everything and running just as many Skill Drains as possible. Since Skill Drain, kind of just completely destroys a lot of the top decks right now, it's a really good route for the deck to take. Doesn't really take anything away from Draco, and is probably the best way to go with the deck at the moment. So we see a copy of Diagram come down here. Diagram is going to allow him to start searching for his Draco cards. He can also pop his own cards to start destroying the Salamangreat player. So in this case, he's going to destroy the Disciples. Maybe search for a monster here. I'm not exactly sure. He could go for Heritage, but he is going to search a Dynamite Knight. Now, Heritage will destroy one of the Salamangreat player's 2 set cards. It is an infinite impermanence. That's nice. That means that Dynamite Knight will have a better chance of resolving if there is the chance that the Salamangreat player tries to do something and then the Draco player does an effect in response. There's the Heritage. It was in his hand, so he is going to get a draw from that Heritage since one type of Draco card was sent to the graveyard this turn. And now he's going to tribute it off for the Dynamite Knight. Heritage hits the graveyard, which will then pop the other one, but that will prompt Artifact Sanctum to be activated. Sanctum not special summoning from the deck, but actually popping a card since it was popped while it was set. We see Dynamite Knight being used in response, but then Effect Veiler was used by the Salamangreat player to stop the Draco player from searching anything with the Dynamite Knight. So now the Sanctum just destroys it, and pretty much both players very low resources now. However, the Draco player does have a copy of Disciples to shuffle 3 Draco cards back into his deck and get an extra draw here. He could also use that Disciples to get another special summon. He still has Diagram up, which although he used it this turn, he has the potential to use next turn and could just, start to come back a little bit. Keep in mind, the Salamangreat player only has this Heat Leo on the board right now, so there isn't a lot he has going for it. Draws into another copy of Diagram. That is a very, very big pull here, because now he could potentially get a card to attack over this Heat Leo. Keep in mind, there is a Baylink, so that is a bit important because Heat Leo will not be destroyed by just being attacked once. But there is the Dynamite Knight again. It was shuffled back from the Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix, which means it's going to probably be coming down here once again. Dynamite Knight's going to have a pretty significant amount of attack too, being at 2,800, being boosted to 300 by this Diagram. So now it looks like the players are just discussing possibly attempting to summon the Dynamite Knight. I'm not exactly sure. It might have been which spells were used to summon. The only effects that have been used at this point, the Disciples was used to just pop. And then there was, Disciples was used to pop a card earlier in the turn. And then the Heritage was used to summon as well as pop. And then the Disciples, though, has not been used to pop, or has not been used to tribute summon anything up to this point. So I think the players are just trying to sort this out right now just to make sure that everything is good to go. So Dynamite Knight comes down, Disciples hits the graveyard, and Dynamite Knight's going to attack over the Heat Leo, but that Baylynx will protect it. So he's going to take 300 damage there, nothing too crazy, and play is going to go back to the Salamangreat player. Now keep in mind, the Salamangreat player does have a Foxy in the graveyard, and there is a Diagram on the field, so he does have access to that if he has a Salamangreat card in hand, but wow, just draws a Phantasme for turn and passes. So again, this is one of the reasons why Draco's so good, is because so many decks play cards that are tailored towards the meta, but when you play against Draco, stuff like Phantasme and all these other cards really don't do anything that much against Draco, and we really just saw that here. I mean, the Draco player just just drew, attacked over the Heat Leo and just set a card and passed. And this is the game that Draco is perfectly okay with playing. It's okay with playing a much slower game because it's going to generate advantage off of Dynamite, different things like that. We see the Salamangreat player using the effect of Foxy, discarding another copy of Foxy to special summon it and pop the Diagram. And there's a There Can Be Only One. Again, such a crippling card against the Salamangreat deck, especially in game 1 when outs are more limited. Obviously, it does have ways to out it through Foxy, through Rage, things like that, but much more limited options when you go into game 1 compared to games 2 and 3. And again, Draco just attacking over Foxy, setting another card, and passing, and he's perfectly okay with it. And there's another Foxy coming down by pitching another copy of Foxy. So all 3 Foxys now in the graveyard. Dynamite Knight's going to be used in response to this Foxy effect to set a copy of Apocalypse. And Foxy's going to come down, pop that copy of There Can Be Only One, which is pretty significant, but he doesn't really have anything else he can do. We know he has that Phantasme in hand that's just sitting there, and the 3rd copy of There Can Be Only One getting flipped up. Oh my lord. That is just tragic for the Salamangreat player here. Just can't really get anything going. And again, even though the Draco player still has plenty of life points to take out for the Salamangreat player, it's just not looking too good for the Salamangreat player here because he's solidifying his position. Here comes an Upstart Goblin from the Draco player, so he's going to go ahead and draw a card, give the Salamangreat player 1,000 life points. which again doesn't matter if he's just getting as many of his control tools as possible. He decides to pass. I'm not sure why he didn't attack with Dynamite Knight there, just to go ahead and kill off the Foxy. I mean, maybe he just didn't want to have there can be only one popped, but I mean, right there, he just attacked it anyway, so maybe it was just a misstep. But now going into it, it looks like he has a copy of Roar. Gonna pitch that copy of Roar, and I believe that's a Soul Drain. So Soul Drain even being incorporated in this Draco deck, negating the effects of monsters in the graveyard, basically a la Abyss Dweller, and that's gonna do it. Draco's gonna take game 1, and we are gonna go into game number 2. Now, Salamangreat is going to kick things off with Salamangreat Circle. Obviously, this is a much better start than the first game where he had nothing other than 3 back row to go on. So we should be able to assemble something pretty significant here. You have to keep in mind, going into games 2 and 3 against Draco, it's still very unlikely they're going to have hand traps because they do play Card of Demise, and they want to just maximize those tools as much as they can by not having stuff like hand traps. I don't think you'd really want to side in hand traps versus Salamangreat specifically. Against the combo decks, I could maybe justify seeing playing different types of hand traps, but against Salamangreat, I don't really think you have to go that far. So now we see the Mirage Stallion come down here. Gazelle was normal summoned to send Spinny, which then resurrected itself to make that Mirage Stallion. I believe I see a Will of the Salamangreat and an Infinite Impermanence in the Salamangreat player's hand here. He's going to have a pretty decent board to start things off. We're just going to have to see how far he can take it. So he's going to grab Jack Jaguar with the Mirage Stallion's effect, now locked into fire effect monsters for the rest of the turn. Going to make that Sunlight Wolf. Sunlight Wolf will have the potential to get back that Gazelle if he can summon something to a zone that it points to, which is going to with Jack Jaguar's effect. So that will most likely prompt the activation here. Going to go see if, oh, maybe he's reconsidering. I think Jack Jaguar would be the correct option though. But he might be do something. Oh, he's actually going to go for Will instead here. Okay, interesting. So he's going to go for Will. Will's going to resurrect the Spinny. And then he's going to link off Spinny for a copy of Balinx, which will then trigger the Sunlight Wolf. Get Gazelle back to hand. That gets him his Sanctuary, which means he can Reincarnation Link summon the Sunlight Wolf. And that will allow him to get his Circle back to his hand and put a Balinx in the graveyard. So that's a pretty solid opener there. So there's Sunlight Wolf, going to add the Circle back with its Reincarnation Link summoned ability. That's nice because it's just fueling consistency. He actually gets to keep the Sanctuary in his hand this way now instead of having it be on the field susceptible to being destroyed by the True Draco spells. And now he's going to grab Jack Jaguar, put that underneath the zone Sunlight Wolf points to. He's going to summon Foul off that, and then is he going to go for... Dweller doesn't really do a whole lot. Oh yeah, I mean, Dweller I guess shuts off the effects of the... It shuts off the graveyard, I suppose, so maybe that's what he's thinking. Maybe that could actually be enough here. And it looks like he's going to set 3 cards in the back row, one of which I believe we know is impermanent. He might have a Roar as well. I mean, that's a pretty solid board. If you're Salamangreat, I think you're pretty happy about that going into most matchups. Obviously, Draco is not like the best deck for Dweller, but it's still not like the worst, I suppose. It's, you know, you guys can let me know down in the comments what you guys think. So let's see what the Draco player's got. He's kicking things off with Diagram. That's a pretty good start. We're going to possibly see a prompt of Dweller here almost instantly, but possibly something else could be used in response to. We could see maybe like a Roar to negate it. We're going to see Circle actually instead being used in response. And now he's going to chain the Abyss Dweller as well as Chainlink 3. So that's going to go ahead now, and we're going to go ahead and see Foxy be added to the Salamangreat player's hand. Dweller is now active, and that is going to summon Gazelle out of the Salamangreat player's hand. Gazelle will trigger, and now he's going to get to dump a Salamangreat card to his graveyard. Remember that Gazelle is being summoned because Circle was sent to the graveyard. Or any Salamangreat card, because technically Jack Jaguar was as well. So he's going to go ahead and set... it looks like he went for the Falco. Okay, so Gazelle sent Falco, and then Falco actually reset the Salamangreat Circle, again, for his own turn. Again, just being able to loop that circle continuously is actually a very good way to just continue to assemble your resources and make sure you always have your consistency. So Diagram's going to pop one of the a set card that the Draco player played. It was a Disciples. So now one of those 4 cards in the Salamangreat player's back row is going to be threatened by that Disciples being destroyed. And the Draco player is going to get to search for Diagram's effect. He might be looking for a monster here. He could go for Heritage to give himself some draws, but it looks like he's going to go for Ignis Heat. pretty much one of the leading monsters of the Draco deck now, since it's still at 3 compared to Dynamite being only at 1. So let's go ahead and see what the Draco player has next. Remember, he's still pretty much got a full grip of cards here. Opting not, the Dweller is actually negating the effects in the graveyard, so the Disciples will not be triggering, excuse me. But again, that's one of the ways why Dweller is actually not too bad against Draco, just because it will be able to shut that down. We see Monarch Stormforth, though. This is a very nice card because it's going to allow him to tribute over something like Sunlight Wolf here, dodging the protection ability of something like Baylynx, and this is a way for him to clear the monsters off the board. He can use Ignis to attack into the Dweller. Ignis is on 2700 to Dweller 17, so the Salamangreat player will take 1000 damage, and that Gazelle's still sitting there, but honestly, not too bad. He did clear the monsters off. His stuff will be online again for next turn, and 3 set cards from the Draco player, and play goes back to the Salamangreat player. We see a copy of Signet Mining. We know he has a Foxy as well as a Sanctuary in his hand, and we might see something come down here. There is a Crackdown targeting the Gazelle. Now remember, he can't use anything like Roar here because he doesn't have a Link monster to negate that. But Crackdown's interesting because that will take away the Gazelle from being able to use that as any sort of Link material. He does still have Will active, which is very strong, and we know he has Foxy, so Crackdown on this Gazelle I don't think is the worst possible thing here. I think there might have been a way to possibly save that Crackdown for a much more crucial point during the Salamangreat player's turn. However, we don't know what the other 2 cards are in the True Draco player's back row here. We'll just have to see how this one plays out. So here comes Signet Mining. Looks like he's going to pitch the Foxy, and that will go ahead and resolve. He is going to chain Ignis in response here, though, so we're going to see if there's a response to that. Possibly considering maybe the Infinite Impermanence that we saw in his hand, and it looks like that's what he's going to do. The nice thing about this is that it threatens the card in the column across from Infinite Impermanence, and it looks like the Draco player is going to allow that to go through. Now keep in mind that card under Gazelle on the Draco's side will be negated if it gets played this turn because of Infinite Impermanence's other ability. But Signet Mining now is going to resolve, and we're going to go ahead and see a Flame Buffalo be added to the hand. Flame Buffalo, again, one of those cards that a lot of Salamangreat players are flocking to just to get that added consistency to ensure that you get those draws and to see as much of your engine as possible. It's like an honorary Salamangreat monster without actually being a Salamangreat card, but it's still very powerful nonetheless. Now we see that the Salamangreat player is just checking out his graveyard to consider his options. He's got a lot there. He's got a Jack Jaguar, he's got a Spinny, he's got a Falco, he's got a Will on the field. Like, there's so many different cards that he has at his disposal here to kind of work around this Ignis. And he also has that circle that he recurred with the Falco last turn, which is going to go ahead and activate right now. So he can pretty much toolbox whatever he needs out of his deck and can pretty much do a wide array of different plays here. And I'm sure, again, depends on those 2 back rows, because I think the biggest thing you have to worry about at this point is there can be only one just completely threatening your entire board, because if it does, then you're not going to be able to summon anything and you're going to be in a pretty tough spot. So he adds a Foxy with that copy of Circle. And now we're going to see that Flame Buffalo come down here. He might be trying to cycle that Foxy for a couple more cards. Are we going to see that there can be only one? And there it is. It was actually not in the column that Infinite Impermanence was negating, so that is very significant. But now it looks like he's going to go ahead and use Flame Buffalo, attack into the Ignis, and possibly just allow that to crash. So it is going to crash. That will trigger the effect of Buffalo, though. So he's going to go ahead and pitch that Foxy, draw a couple new cards here. He took about, I believe, 1400 damage or so. Not too bad if you're just trying to cycle through to a couple new cards. But again, now there can be only one is actually pretty, not that strong, because now he can use Foxy's effect to go ahead and pop the there can be only one. And now he's kind of got free range to go off here. Remember, he's got Jack Jaguar, he's got Spinny, he's got Falco. He's got a lot of different cards at his disposal here. It looks like he's going to go get that Spinny out of his grave, go for a Mirage Stallion play. He also still has not yet used Will the Salamangreat to resurrect anything. So he has a lot of different plays available at his disposal. That Buffalo was really nice because I believe it drew him into the Salamangreat card he needed to be able to get to that Foxy. And this might be the turning point for this game where the Salamangreat player might be in full control of everything. He also kept the Sanctuary as well, making Reincarnation Link summoning that much easier for him. And he picked up an Ash Blossom off of that Flame Buffalo as well. So that will deny the Draco player from having any sort of comeback capabilities like Card of Demise or even shutting off the Diagram if he feels that that's really necessary. And with the true Draco player with no cards in hand and top decking, this is going to be a pretty convincing game 2 here from the Salamangreat player by the looks of it. I could be wrong, I don't want to speak too soon, but I believe he should have full control of this game, especially since Impermanence has that back row card on lock. So he's going to go for Sunlight Wolf here. And it looks like he's just trying to decide what he wants to do. It looks like he's going to use the Mirage Stallion to bounce the Gazelle back to his own hand, which is a really, really cool play, because if he does anything to get a Salamangreat card into the graveyard again, Gazelle's going to leap back out and just help fuel his engine continuously. That's a really cool way to play around Crackdown. I absolutely love that play. And now he's going to go ahead and grab possibly the I'm not actually sure, because he still has the Jack Jaguar. Yeah, he looks like he's gonna go for that, so he's gonna shuffle back something into his extra deck. So he's gonna go ahead and bounce back that Sunlight Wolf. That will trigger the Sunlight Wolf he has on the field, and that will allow him to get a copy of any of his Salamangreat cards, or excuse me, his fire monsters to his hand. He's gonna go for the Foxy. Now he's gonna link those off for another Sunlight Wolf. And then that's going to trigger Gazelle. Gazelle can then dump the counter trap, which then Sunlight Wolf can get back. Oh, he's actually going to go for Rage, so he might have the counter trap actually already in the back row. So he's going to use that, pick up the Rage. Rage can even destroy the Diagram as well, which that would just completely be a huge blowout here, because Sunlight Wolf with Rage can pop 2 different cards. And oh man, this is going to be brutal. So Wolf is going to get back that copy of Rage, and this is not looking good for the true Draco player. That's all I can say. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. We're just seeing the snowballing here. He can actually even go into a copy of a Heat Leo here to shuffle back that other back row and just leave the true Draco player with nothing, and it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. So he's going to shuffle that back. He can even Reincarnation Link summon that card, and that way Rage can pop 3 cards on his opponent's turn, and he's got Ash Blossom in hand. Yeah, this one has got to be a wrap. But it looks like the players are just still trying to just play everything out here. He shuffled back that last back row because remember, Infinite Impermanence was negating it. That's why he could not use it in response. Here comes the Sanctuary. Sanctuary is going to go ahead, get a new copy of Heat Leo that has now been Reincarnation Link summoned. This is main phase 2 though, so we won't be doing anything in the battle phase. And there is the Roar being set. And that's going to do it. The Draco player has seen enough, and we are going to game number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Man, this just goes to show that both these decks are still pretty competitive in this current format. While they may not be at the top of the top, these are both decks that you're going to see at any sort of competitive event like a Regionals, a YCS, or even your locals, maybe towards the top tables as well. So these are 2 decks you definitely need to know your matchups for. Draco's going to start. It's going to kick things off with Pot of Duality, grabbing a copy of True Draco Apocalypse. This is actually the first time Draco gets to go first, and this is obviously where a control / stun deck wants to be, especially playing as many back row heavy cards as it does. I believe I see a copy of There Can Be Only One in the Draco player's hand. He is going to tribute off a copy of Apocalypse though for a Majesty Maiden, and set 2 cards before activating a copy of Card of Demise. That Card of Demise will resolve, so that definitely indicates that there's no Ash Blossom in the hand of the Salamangreat player, so that's just good information to have for the Draco player moving forward. I believe he drew another copy of Card of Demise off of that, if that spell on the far left there is what I think, or on the far right, excuse me, is what I think it is. And on the end phase, he is going to have to pitch that Ignis, because it is a monster, unfortunately, but having a Maiden +4 back row, if one of them is in fact another Card of Demise, is still pretty good for your opening if you're Draco. I don't really think you're going to complain too much about that. I think the only thing you really wish you would have here is Diagram, but honestly, I think this is still a pretty solid opening for Draco all around. So now Salamangreat gets to go second, and again, not really too much going on here at the start. It looks like he's got a wide variety of different monsters in his hand, but it's going to be interesting to see how much of a role Foxy is going to continue to keep playing in this matchup. He's just been able to constantly put tons of pressure on the Draco player by popping the Diagram that There Can Be Only One. Here's the There Can Be Only One again. Foxy is going to use its first effect this time though, which is of note, and he's going to whiff. He's going to hit 2 Ash Blossoms and a Signet Mining, so no cards there for the Salamangreat player, just trying to generate some sort of advantage. And now he's just going to set a card. Oh, wow, is that going to be it? Wow, that looks like a full hand of monsters for the Salamangreat player, and that's not ideal, and he's going to pass it over to the Draco player. Now, the nice thing is, if that Foxy does go to the graveyard, he does have a way. Oh, but there's Card of Demise. This is exactly what I was worried about, because now he's just going to be able to turbo off here. Again, the Salamangreat player will not take any damage because of Card of Demise being in effect, but the fact that he can set up his board and get all of his floodgates online is going to be very significant. However, like I was saying before, if Foxy does go to the graveyard, it will be able to resurrect itself and pop that there can be only one to give the Salamangreat player a little bit of hope. But after 2 copies of Card of Demise, this is going to be very, very rough for the Salamangreat player to fight back against. So we see Diagram coming. He actually popped his Maiden, I believe, for a copy of Heritage. Now, he can use that Heritage to draw himself 1 card. He has the Maiden, Maiden being the only Draco card to have hit the graveyard this turn. He could up that by sending some more spells and traps to the graveyard too, but don't really know what else he's got at the moment. And trying to summon the wrong card there. It looks like he was trying to summon his Heritage, but he meant to play his Ignis Heat, and that's going to go ahead and prompt the effect of the Disciples, popping the Infinite Impermanence, and now here comes Heritage, allowing him to draw for 2 if he so wishes, because we had a monster and a spell hit the graveyard this turn. Now, he is still under Card of Demise. That is something to keep in mind. But there's another copy of Diagram. That's pretty strong. Diagram can then use itself to pop any of the other cards, maybe even that Heritage if he no longer sees that he needs it. He's actually going to pop off Ignis, interestingly enough. And that's going to allow him to go for something else. He might go for like a Dynamite Knight, and that is what he's going to do, because then he can use that Heritage to summon Dynamite Knight, set that other card that's in his hand, and not have to discard anything to Card of Demise's effect during the end phase. So that might be the play here. It looks like that's what he's going to go ahead and do. So there goes the Heritage, there goes the Heritage. Dynamite Knight's going to attack Foxy. He's taking life points, but he shouldn't take any damage because he is under Card of Demise. So no damage has been done at this point. Hopefully those players recognize that. And the Draco player is going to pass turn back to the Salamangreat player. So again, the Salamangreat player's got a pretty rough situation here. I mean, Foxy is going to be able to take out the There Can Be Only One, which is significant, but again, he has a lot to fight through here with 4 different back row. He's going to pitch Spinny. That's a pretty good card to pitch if you're going to pitch anything. And here comes Foxy taking out the There Can Be Only One, unless the Draco player does have any sort of response to this, although I'm not entirely sure. So he is going to go ahead and pop the There Can Be Only One. Now, Spinny's going to use its effect to possibly summon itself out, but we see a True King's Return being used in response here, and he's going to go ahead and resurrect one of his True Draco monsters. He's going to go for Ignis in defense, and now he's going to go ahead and overlay that Spinny and that Foxy for a copy of Mirage Stalio. So we got to the Stalio, but the Draco player may have another card here. There's an Apocalypse. And he's going to go and use the effect of Apocalypse, get rid of the True King's Return to forcibly reduce the attack of all the opponent's monsters, but he mainly just wants to get True King's Return in the graveyard to pop the Mirage Stalio before it has the opportunity to activate its effect. So now Foxy is used in effect this turn, Spinny is used its effect, and again, the Salamangreat player just does not have a lot of other options. He has not normal summon, to be fair, so he still has the potential to do that, but losing a big amount of his recursion here could definitely hurt his plays moving forward. The Draco player just in a very, very comfortable lead at this point. It's going to be very rough for the Salamangreat player. I'm really curious to see if he can manage to claw back into this and mount some sort of comeback here. Remember, we are in game 3, so the side decks are in play. We see Salamangreat Falco be normal summoned from the Salamangreat player. Not the best card, but again, it's not the worst either. He can go ahead and attack over the Ignis with Falco, and it looks like that's what he's going to do. So just clearing off one of those cards. He's going to go to main phase 2, link off the Falco for a copy of Balinx, just to go ahead, try to grab the copy of... oh wow, he's not grabbing anything because Skill Drain just got flipped. The the Draco player is going to take 1,000 life points, so 7,000 life points for the Draco player to the 8,000 of the Salamangreat player. And so he just sets a card and passes. That is very, very rough. So now we see the Ignis be tribute summoned using the copy of Apocalypse that was already face up. He's going to pop the Balinx, and there's another Card of Demise. Oh my lord. Now the thing is, I don't think the Draco player actually attacked before using that Card of Demise, so he's actually not going to take any damage here. We'll have to see, unless they already decided that they were going to. Maybe he was just being maybe he was just very quick to pull the trigger on that. But there's a duality. We see an Inspector border, a Crackdown, and I believe that's an Imperial Order potentially. That was the first card revealed. He's going to go ahead and grab the Crackdown, it looks like. But again, I feel like that's a bit of a misplay from the Draco player's part because he is not able to do any damage because he used the Card of Demise. But he's attacking here, so actually he isn't taking any damage, even though they are calculating that that is the case. Do keep that in mind. Card of Demise means your opponent does not take any damage for the rest of the turn if you activate it. And I think that's something that both players might be overlooking here, resolving Card of Demise in the end phase for that Inspector border that is in his hand. Remember, the Salamangreat player is on 8,000 life points here because Card of Demise makes it so that he did take 0 damage, and the Draco player has played Skill Drain, so that is putting him currently at 7,000. So even though these players may not realize it, I believe the Salamangreat player is actually in the lead here. I think they're actually just checking the life, but at the same time, it's like I said, they could be playing under completely different pretenses now if that is the case, because Card of Demise does have that major downside, well, or upside, depending on which perspective that you're looking at it, because in this case, the Salamangreat player is actually, you know, ahead on life, and I'm not sure if they're close to getting into time or anything, but we're gonna have to see what happens here. Hopefully that doesn't, you know, that's not a factor or anything, but it could be very significant. So, Twin Twister coming down. That's a pretty nice draw to take out those 2 back row. He's gonna pitch a copy of Effect Veiler, but that could also prompt an effect from Dynamite Knight or Ignis. He's gonna take out both back rows, one being the Crackdown, and I couldn't exactly see what the other one was. It might have been a copy of There Can Be Only One. Now, he can use his effect of Foxy to resurrect it to pop Skill Drain, because I believe that's an effect that activates in the graveyard. And so if he does that, that would be a way for him to get his cards back online. Well, actually, he can't use Skill Drain. He can't use his Dynamite Knight or his Ignis to get an effect because Skill Drain is online, excuse me. But it's still, you know, if Skill Drain does get popped, those effects will become online once again. Players looks like they're just discussing Life Total or something like that. So many resources in the Salamangreat player's graveyard, though. There's a Foxy, there's a Spinny, there's a Falco. There are some plays to be had here. But taking out that Skill Drain is definitely priority number 1 if he wants to be able to make any sort of push here. There's also that one card in the back row. I'm not sure if that will necessarily matter, but it could. There's a Spinny. That is the last card in the Salamangreat player's hand. He's going to use the effect of Falco, bounce the Spinny back to his hand to special summon it. And I was going to go ahead and use that Falco to possibly go for a copy of Balinx. And now we're going to see him pitch the Spinny to resurrect the Foxy here. And like I said, Foxy does activate in the graveyard, and that is all one effect. It's not like 2 separate effects to pop a card. The effect to special summon it and pop a card is all something that triggers in the graveyard, so essentially it will not be negated by Skill Drain because Skill Drain is only on the field. So Skill Drain is now in the graveyard. Now he can resurrect the Spinny using its effect. Dynamite Knight is now online, but there's a Roar. Wow, okay, so Roar gonna take out the Dynamite Knight here. There comes Mirage Stalio. Could the Salamangreat player actually turn this around? So Mirage Stalio is going to go ahead, use its effect, detach Foxy, special summon Gazelle. Gazelle can dump something like Jack Jaguar to the grave. This will prompt an effect of Ignis here, but it's a spell, so that's not as worrisome as Dynamite Knight comparatively, because that's something that the Salamangreat player will not have to worry about until his turn rolls around. Jack Jaguar is going to be the card of choice to send off of the copy of Gazelle here. And again, he's still, he's used pretty much all the other effect monsters of his Salamangreat cards in his graveyard up to this point, I believe. He's used Spinny, he's used Falco, he's used Foxy. Jack Jaguar would be a good one because then you can resurrect it and possibly trigger your Sunlight Wolf. You also already have Roar used and you can reset that with Roar's ability. So there's a lot going on here, and there's definitely a potential that the Salamangreat player could turn this one around. He's going to go ahead and send a copy of Rage, it looks like. So what he might do is he might actually add Rage back with Sunlight Wolf and then use Roar's effect when a monster's Reincarnation Link summoned to potentially resummon it, reset that card that way. We'll just have to see what he does here. So he's going to link off the Balinx and the Mirage Stalio for a copy of Sunlight Wolf, most likely. Accidentally grabbing his opponent's deck because I think they have the same colored sleeves for that. So then there's the Sunlight Wolf. Sunlight Wolf is going to bounce the Ignis back to hand. And that's going to summon out a Balinx to the zone that the Sunlight Wolf points to. That's going to add Gazelle back to his hand. That is a 1800 and a 500 attack value monster there. Now, he could just put both of these into a copy of another Sunlight Wolf or a Sanctuary, I think, because he could just use, yeah, he's going to use Balinx's effect to search Sanctuary. He can Reincarnation Link Summon, keep that Balinx alive, actually, if he so chooses. And he's got full control of this game now. I mean, Diagram is still a concern and the spell in his hand, but for the most part, I mean, Ignis is not really going to be able to do a whole lot with that Roar, being able to possibly just destroy it if he uses any effect, and he has the effect of Rage, too. And so now we go ahead and see here, he's going to possibly, oh, he's going to go to battle phase. Looks like he's going to attack with both of them. And now he's going to, oh, that's so, he conceded, but actually, I'm pretty sure the Salamangreat player won. I'm pretty sure time got called in the round because this was a bit of a longer match. However, the Salamangreat player did actually win that game because of the fact that, like I said, the Draco player was attacking while Card of Demise's effect was already active, and there was no damage being taken. So the Salamangreat player actually did in fact win that game, guys. Definitely remember to know these card effects because it's very important. It can make the difference between winning or losing a game. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.